Hello and welcome everybody to our Holding Space webinar today. It's really lovely to see you, whether you're here in person or whether you're joining us later with the recording. And I've got a special guest for you today, Elizabeth Lee, who's going to be leading us through a labyrinth exercise. Those of you who are with us live have been emailed that labyrinth, so you can follow along with the activity that she's going to do after the presentation today. And I'm going to introduce Elizabeth formally in a moment, but she's had more than 20 years of experience walking and working with labyrinths. So she's in a great position to share her knowledge and experience and even that exercise with us today. So it's going to be a really wonderful hour and really wonderful that you can join us from wherever you're coming in from around Australia and even around the world today. So really great to have you here. My name's Jackie Saward. I'm the Director of Sydney Centre for Creative Change. And we run training online for mental health professionals who want to use creativity in more active ways with all their clients. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I come to you from today, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, and pay collective respects to elders past, present and emerging. And to acknowledge also traditional peoples who are on the lands that you're sitting on today, and any who may be with us today, a special welcome. And welcome to everybody here. There's the possibility of getting a PD certificate for this hour of your being here today. And if you stay with us until the very end of the hour today, we're going to do a very quick quiz. It'll be a true-false quiz. And if you get 80% of those answers correct, then we can send you a PD certificate for attendance today. We're also going to have some opportunities in a breakout room, and you'll get a chance to think about and reflect on this process today and how you might be able to apply it in your personal or professional life. And you'll get a chance to meet and chat with a few other people as well, which is always a really great part of this. To finish up with, I'm going to tell you very briefly some of the things we've got available, and I'm going to give a free webinar out to somebody with a little activity that we're going to do. So it should be a full and a fun hour that we have today. I'm going to share my slides briefly just to introduce Liz to you. And as you can see, this is our 24th in our series in this holding space process. And this one is called Ancient Paths for Wisdom Here and Now. Our special guest facilitating this webinar for us today is Elizabeth Lee, who has a passion for fostering human connection, human connection through deep listening. Labyrinths have been a part of Liz's life for more than 20 years. And she incorporates them into her work as a spiritual director, retreat facilitator and supervisor. Liz has a diverse professional background, most recently having the privilege of offering pastoral care among those living with homelessness, and prior to that, years of life-giving ministry as a prison chaplain. Liz holds an MA in theology, a BSc in an honours in Bachelor of Science, and a grad dip and a master's in education. So very experienced clinician with us today, and we're very excited to have her here. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Liz and hand over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. And I'm going to share my screen in a moment, and we'll start just with a few minutes of grounding ourselves and centering ourselves as we start. So hopefully you can all see my screen. So let's just take a moment to pause. And as we gather across this land from east to west, north to south, each of us on Aboriginal land that was taken without consent, treaty or compensation. I acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and any Indigenous people with us here today. I invite you to name for yourself and honour the Indigenous people at the land on which you are located. Take a moment to sense what it would feel like to walk on country, to feel connected with Mother Earth and all that she has provided you with and provided all previous generations. Take a moment to breathe and become present to this space that we share together in this moment, the only moment that we have. And I welcome each of you gathered here today. It is my intention to share with you my story with Labyrinths and the wisdom that these ancient paths have offered me and offer us here and now. Labyrinths have been a part of my life for several decades now. If I remember correctly, Trish Watts was leading a walk at Paddington Uniting Church one New Year's Eve. The canvas labyrinth was spread out on the floor, much like this one. It took me a few more years and several other opportunities to walk labyrinths before they became part of my life on a more regular basis. Over the years, I have travelled to specific locations because of labyrinths or sought out labyrinths when visiting an area. I walk labyrinths by myself, in the company of a friend or friends, or as part of a facilitated community labyrinth walk. Walking labyrinths help me to slow down, to discern a decision, to contemplate a dilemma, to grieve, to be present to the moment, to take time to give thanks. I've incorporated labyrinth walks into ceremonies and invited children to playfully explore them. I've wept, laughed, danced, dawdled around labyrinths. Labyrinth walks deepen my experience of life, ignite insights, stir emotions, offer solace, evoke a sense of peace, and affirm callings. I am richer for every labyrinth walk that I have taken. Labyrinths have been a potent symbol in many cultures for thousands of years. There's a famous legend about Theseus, a mythical king and founder hero of Athens. It tells in part the story of his slaying of the Minotaur, half man, half bull, defeating the beast at the heart of darkness. Unlike his predecessors, Theseus is able to find his way out of the labyrinth because Ariadne, who he was in love with, gave him a ball of thread, which he unrolled as he penetrated the labyrinth, thus allowing him to find his way back out. While the earliest examples have been traced back some 4,000 years to rock carvings, their origins remain quite mysterious. Found in different points, at different points of time in different places, as diverse as Brazil, Arizona, Iceland, across Europe, in Africa, India, and Sumatra. Some consider Aboriginal songlines as a form of labyrinth. Labyrinths are found in Roman floor mosaics and Greek pottery. During medieval times, the labyrinth designs began to appear on floors of churches and cathedrals in Europe, on village greens and hilltops, on remote coastlines, islands in Scandinavia up to the Arctic Circle and beyond. They're now found in parks and playgrounds, in hospitals, schools, churches, retreat centres. and prisons. Let us pause here as I share a short video relating to labyrinths in prisons.
I think the most important thing for incarcerated women is to feel that they've been heard. And so we just try to get them to say anything, to share whatever might be on their minds, whatever concerns. And some of the things that they share are simply extraordinary. I mean, you would not believe what comes out of these people. In fact, the first thing that they said was, this is the only time when we can experience quiet. The whole environment is so noisy all the time. So I thought if all we ever do is give them a few minutes of quiet, I mean, that in itself would be a huge success. And later on, they shared with us that being part of the Labyrinth program had actually created for them a safe community. Because if you think about being from a foreign country and whatever you've done to get yourself into this prison, you have no idea of what the culture is or what the boundaries are or what the messages from anybody else are. And as the woman that shared this said to me, you walk into the dining hall, and if you can see somebody at a table who had been at the Labyrinth, that's a safe place to sit. Oh my goodness. I mean, the ripples, it almost makes me cry. They're so much greater than you would have thought.
Labyrinths also pop up on beaches, in the bush, in halls, shopping plazas, and I've become quite proficient at taping them on carpet or outdoors. Jeff Saward, a labyrinth historian, says, throughout the long history of labyrinths, whenever and wherever society is going through rapid change and development, labyrinths have blossomed. Now humanity is seeking a sure path of the labyrinth in an uncertain and confusing world. A labyrinth is a meandering path, often unicircular, with a single path leading to the centre. Labyrinths are an ancient archetype used symbolically as walking meditation or dance, site of rituals and ceremony. Labyrinths are tools for personal, psychological and spiritual transformation. And they're also thought to enhance right brain activity. Labyrinths evoke metaphor, sacred geometry, spiritual pilgrimage, religious practice, mindfulness, environmental art, and community building. There are two predominant labyrinth designs. The oldest is known as the classic labyrinth, the more recent the Chartres Labyrinth, which is found on the floor of Chartres Cathedral in France and dates from the 13th century. The classic seven-circuit labyrinth, with its broad sweeping turns, tends to create a relaxed, extroverted state of mind. The 11-circuit medieval labyrinth takes you through many more turns, but in both directions before you reach the centre. Tends to leave people in a more introverted and reflective state. Over the years, various other designs have been developed, but while there are many different labyrinth designs, there are some distinctive features that are common to most labyrinths and distinguish them from mazes with which they're often confused. A labyrinth only has one way in and has the same way out. And while it twists and turns and doubles back on itself, disorientating one in the process, there are no dead ends or decisions to make as to whether to turn this way or that way. A maze seeks to engage our minds and set a puzzle for us. A labyrinth seeks to allow our whole being to move into the journey. We may feel lost at times, or have no idea how far there is yet to go. But all the labyrinth requires us to do is simply take one step at a time, and the path will lead us to the centre. It is an exercise in trust, in slowing down, in surrendering control, in engaging all our senses, and in noticing how wisdom is communicating with us. Chartres says, whatever occurs in the labyrinth is a metaphor. While looking at this labyrinth, which is huge, I want to just share with you that it is one of the most moving labyrinths I've ever experienced. These pictures are from 2006, just before it was completed. The lines between the paths are made up of more than 60,000 pebbles, each bearing the name, age, and year of death of those who died in the civil war that terrorized and murdered tens of thousands of Peruvians over some 20 years in the 1980s and 90s. Among the stones is one bearing the name of an Australian Josephite nun, Sister Irene McCormack, who was killed by the Shining Path guerrillas in 1991. In the centre of the labyrinth is the Weeping Eye sculpture, here as I photographed it in 2006, and then again when the labyrinth was completed. This memorial is a powerful expression of pain, suffering, and the need to heal deep wounds. It's also a powerful symbol of great courage and strength to begin again. The labyrinth reminds us that the quickest path to our destination is not always the best. It invites you to open to the wisdom speaking within you through the many more metaphors and symbols that you may be encountered on the journey. The labyrinth is a form of walking meditation, a way to open up your whole body to the wisdom within and the wisdom beyond. It offers us a space to reflect, to recognize that wisdom is with us at every turn on the path and is always full of love for us, calling us to be who we are becoming. It seems to me to encompass a journey to the center of one's very being. During the walk inward, with its many surprising and disconcerting turns, one is invited to release old patterns, worn out ideas and concepts, debilitating emotions, unhelpful behaviours. Arriving at the centre, one is asked to experience the recovery of their intimate, purposeful intelligence, their essence, to take time at the still point, and to know at a very deep level one is in union with the great mystery. Helen Curry says, the centre point experience can range from a sense of becoming lighter, literally enlightened, to a mystical aha. Sometimes the joy is in the silence, or a feeling that the mind-body system is being rewired. One enters the doorway of a different reality, almost beyond words. While there's no right or wrong way to walk a labyrinth, some envisage 3 stages of the process. The walk in, a time of release. The time in the centre, a time for receiving. And the walk out, a time of returning. But as Rumi says, as you start to walk, the way appears. When I worked at Matthew Talbot Hostel, I offered labyrinth walks to those living with homelessness. As part of the 2-hour program that I offered weekly in the learning centre attached to the hostel, I would invite participants to walk the canvas labyrinth over a series of 4 weeks. Sometimes I would invite them to walk with an object. On one occasion, a man chose to walk with an empty pill container. When we shared our reflections on the walk, he said he had chosen the pill container as his daughter was struggling with drug addiction. I also knew that he was struggling with drugs. I would be assisted by others to hold space for these walks. I observed one man engaged in a 45-minute conversation with one of the volunteers following his walk, the longest I'd ever seen him in a heart-to-heart over the years I had known him. During Lent, I would tape a labyrinth on the floor of the chapel and invite the men to walk the labyrinth as they reflected on the relevant Sunday Gospel during the weeks of Lent. One time, they were asked to consider what they would like to let go of this Lent. One man asked, "Can we let go of more than one thing?" For our Holy Thursday service, we washed the feet of one another around the labyrinth. On Good Friday, the men would approach the cross at the centre of a processional labyrinth. Walking is not the only way to engage with the labyrinths. You can draw them or create them out of a wide variety of materials. You can colour them, much as one would colour the mindfulness colouring activities. And there are a variety of finger labyrinths on the internet. You can obtain black line masters, which can be easily printed. A book by Sally Longley, which I'll refer to later, includes an embossed cardboard labyrinth. Mark Healy from the Labyrinth Collective in Tasmania makes and sells wooden and acrylic finger labyrinths. The wooden ones are beautiful decorative pieces of art, while the acrylic ones are useful in hospitals, aged care facilities, homeless hostels, prisons, etc., where you would want to be able to clean them after use. We in Sydney are very fortunate to have a wonderful Chartres Labyrinth in Centennial Park, and for a number of years there have been regular group labyrinth walks at 9 a.m. on the first Sunday of every month. Solstice walks are also offered. This year I've been regularly facilitating 2 monthly labyrinth walks. On the first Friday of the month, the walk usually uses secular language, and we've had themes such as intentions, mindfulness, autumn, and suffering. During these walks, after connecting with and acknowledging country, I offer a few short quotes or images related to the topic, then invite people to walk as it suits them. These walks tend to proceed at a slow, reflective pace, although if children are present, they can have a more vibrant and energetic feel. We wait for all to walk, holding space for one another. The walk is then followed by a time to journal before we gather over a cuppa and share, to the extent that we feel comfortable, what has stirred with us during that walk. The second monthly walk I facilitate draws on the beautiful book by Dr. Sally Longley, Walking the Labyrinth with the Beloved in John's Gospel. Each month, I select a walk, drawing on a verse or a whole story from a chapter from the Gospel of John in the Bible. These walks tend to follow a similar format to that I've just described. These Centennial Park Labyrinth walks are held in a public space, so all are invited to join, and some of those passing do so. Others just take a moment to pause with curiosity, as many did on the walk that I led on Good Friday, in which we were walking with the pain and suffering of the world. On the first Saturday in May, World Labyrinth Day, people from around the world walked labyrinths at 1 p.m, creating an intentional wave of peace across the world over a 24-hour period. You're welcome to join me or to suggest others to come to the first or fourth Friday walks at the Centennial Park Labyrinth, each of which commence at 10 a.m. There's no charge, although some do make a donation towards the morning tea that I provide. And this last slide, which will be available to you in the PowerPoint and the recording, has some resources that you might find helpful. And if you're interested in finding labyrinths, either in Australia or around the world, there are 2 labyrinth locators, the World Labyrinth Locator and the Australian Labyrinth Locator. There's also a network, the Australian Labyrinth Network. There's a group of people who identify as part of the Sydney Labyrinth. There's a web page for the Centennial Park Labyrinth. There's the link to the Labyrinth Collective, which makes some of the finger labyrinths and does a whole lot of other work around labyrinths, and also another supplier of finger labyrinths. So at this point, I'll stop the screen share. Okay. And Jackie sent to you a black line master finger labyrinth, which I'm hoping that you've all got before you. And we'll use this for a short labyrinth activity, and it's based on a labyrinth walk that I led on the 7th of May, in which our theme was silence. Now, when I led it at Centennial Park, obviously we were walking the labyrinth, and what I'm offering you now is a short time with the finger labyrinth using a similar process, but it's much truncated. We'll take about 10 minutes for this whole exercise, and then you'll have the opportunity to go into breakout groups, and from then you'll also share something of how the experience was for you. Then Jackie will call you back to the main room, and there'll be the opportunity to both reflect on the activity and also some general questions. So let's just take a moment to still our bodies and quiet our minds. Just take 3 long, slow breaths. And I will share with you a couple of quotes, first from Julia Baird, from her book Phosphorescence. Long recognized in all spiritual traditions, periods of silence allow for us to become free from our habitual distractions and to settle into ourselves, to learn how to just be. In this space, we can become aware of the presence of life interwoven. Then from the Indigenous elder, Miriam Rose Bowman, highlights the power of silence for Aboriginal people in the idea of Dardidi, inner deep listening and quiet stillness. My people are not threatened by silence. They're completely at home in it. They have lived for thousands of years with nature's quietness. My people today recognize and experience in this quietness the great life-giving spirit. Our Aboriginal culture has taught us to be still and to wait. We do not try to hurry things up. We let them follow their natural course, like the seasons. To be still brings peace, and it brings understanding. We're asking our fellow Australians to take time to know us, to be still, to listen to us. Back to Julia. Yet to discover the power of quiet time will be hard for many of us, but without recovering some sense of the power of silence, we could easily lose our minds in the avalanche of anxiety and depression. It is time for shopping therapy and striving workforce ambition to be replaced by something else that nurtures our inner spirit. and Thich Nhat Hanh, there is a beauty calling us every day, every hour, but we're rarely in a position to listen. The basic condition for us to be able to hear the call of beauty and respond to it is silence. If we don't have silence in ourselves, if our mind, our body are full of noise, then we can't hear beauty's call. With these quotes resting on your heart, I now invite you to again breathe slowly in and out. Listen and hear the silence. Listen and see, taste, and smell the silence. Listen and embrace the silence. And when you feel ready, consider what invitation these words on silence may be offering you, and begin to trace the labyrinth path with your finger, either from your dominant or your non-dominant hand. And as you do so, be alert to your senses and notice what emotions arise for you as you walk with your fingers over the next period of time. Gently coming back. Following your time with the labyrinth, notice what has arisen for you. What feelings may have been touched, what insights or gleanings have emerged. Is there an invitation for you regarding the next steps you might take? And I invite you to share your experience with others in breakout groups when Jackie's ready to put you into them. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz, for facilitating that lovely both presentation and exercise for us to do. I'm going to invite you to join a breakout room in just a moment. In that time, please introduce yourself to the two other people that'll be in your room. And if you can have your cameras on for this and your microphones, it'll be great to be able to see others and to be able to touch base with others and to share what your experience was today of this. If you've had any other experiences with labyrinths and how you might be able to use methods like this in the future also. So we're going to have about 10 minutes in those breakout rooms to connect with others. And I'll automatically bring you back after 10 minutes. You'll get a warning with 1 minute to go in 9 minutes' time. You don't have to do anything. You'll just automatically come back here, and then we might get a few people to reflect on what that experience was like to share as well. So welcome back to those people who are coming back now. The others will be joining us back in a few moments as well. So thank you for being part of that discussion. And I'm curious about some of the things that you might have been reflecting on in those groups. Is there anybody here back so far who'd like to share some of their reflections? Just give us a wave and I'll invite you to unmute. Gabrielle, yes.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that introduction, and Jackie for this session. I was actually facilitating a labyrinth on the weekend at a retreat, so it was really lovely to have more background behind it. Thank you, Elizabeth. One of the things we discussed on the weekend as well as today is that tendency or the permission to be still in the centre, and how important that is to reflect on that completion moment before we move out again, and that a lot of times in our busy worlds we get somewhere and then we're rushing off to the next thing, and we're not actually taking the time to really be still and savor that completion moment. We've just reached that goal and went on to the next thing. So that was one of our reflections that we chatted about, the importance of savoring and honoring a completion process before we move back out into the world, or honoring the journey, I guess, and taking the moment to do that in the middle rather than just rushing back out again. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And I agree. And when I watch people at the Centennial Park Labyrinth, it's got a big enough centre that you can have multiple people in there. So sometimes when you're doing a facilitated walk, the centre of a labyrinth may be too small to hold people. So they feel as if they need to get out so others can come in. But when you've got a nice large labyrinth, it does allow for that. And then likewise, when you've completed the outward journey, to actually stay with that and not rush off into the daily activities. And in part, that's why I encourage the journaling at the end of the activity. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Gabrielle, and for your response, Liz, as well. Anybody else like to share what came up for them? Jennifer, thanks.
Yes, I went into the labyrinth with a particular question on my heart, and I want to have answers. And so I was walking the labyrinth, and I got to a point where I heard the word wait, and impatient, I wanted to move ahead, but I waited there for some seconds or more. And when I left that place of waiting, my whole body relaxed, and I didn't need to know. I gave up that needing the answers and the way to do things, and felt as slow as I went, it was okay.
Beautiful.
And that was a real learning for me, and very powerful. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing. Yes. And we find that on the physical, the constructed labyrinths as well, that people will just stop where they need to stop and just be present to what they need to in that moment.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody else like to share? Melinda Rowe, would you like to unmute?
There. I have a question about using the dominant hand or the non-dominant hand when you're doing the finger labyrinth, and what difference that makes. Well, yeah.
I don't have a lot of insight into that. It would be something to play with. One of the finger labyrinths I have is actually 2 of them on the one board. And so you can actually go both ways. One's the mirror reflection of the other, but you can do it both ways. But again, I haven't really played a lot with that. But it would be something interesting for you to experiment with.
If I could maybe jump in there as well, I think when we do use our non-dominant hand, we invite a different part of consciousness and potentially tapping into our creativity and our emotions a little bit more, because we often have less control with a non-dominant hand. And I think when we abdicate control, we also invite in another way of experiencing. So I always encourage people, if they're feeling a bit stuck and trying to get into a creative process, particularly in an art exercise, it's really wonderful to be able to use things that we have less, or facilities that we have less control over, to 1, relax, 2, to tap into creativity, and 3, to recognize that it doesn't have to be the way that we normally do things, and inviting that different perception, I think, can lead us into a different state as well. So thanks for that question. There's a few other questions that I know people might have. Susie, did you have your hand up there? Did you want to unmute and ask or comment?
I was wondering, is there a way, whether it's of leaving a labyrinth, whether it's either the finger one on an A4 piece of paper or a walking one, is there a correct way to leave a labyrinth?
There's no right or wrong way with anything with labyrinths. You just go as you want. I notice that a lot of people take time to honour the walk. So when they exit a labyrinth, they may bow to the centre of the labyrinth. They may use a body gesture. They may acknowledge the facilitator if it's a group facilitated walk. Sometimes when I actually facilitate, I may incorporate carrying something as part of the activity, which they may have left in the centre, or they may have picked up at the centre, and so doing something with the thing that they've carried may also be part of it. But yeah, it's only limited by the creativity of either the facilitator or the person doing the walking.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask another question as well? Have we got time?
Yep, another quick one, because we've got a few others lined up as well. So thanks.
Okay. So I'm in a primary school, and we've got one very quite profoundly autistic boy. And even though the Labyrinths is meant to be about mindfulness, one of the people in our group said about can you use it non-mindfully? And I was thinking, this autistic boy who runs around and is non-verbal and everything, is there a way for a labyrinth to be used by someone like that?
I would instinctively say yes. And if you were to do some Google searching around labyrinths and autism, there's a group in Chicago that does quite a lot of work with disadvantaged kids, and labyrinths, and they offer a labyrinth club, shall we say, after school. And, you know, even creating labyrinths out of things like dried beans and all of those type of activities, you know, so the construction of labyrinths in varying ways. And you could, as a community, construct labyrinths and involve this particular child in ways that are helpful to them. But lots of opportunities. You can dance labyrinths, you can do all sorts of things.
Oh, wow. Okay. That sounds fantastic.
Thanks for those questions, Susie. Elizabeth, there's another one that's in the chat here. I'd just like to read out to you from Nicole, who's training in equine assisted therapy. Is this something that could be useful on horseback as a mindfulness exercise, or even leading a horse or dog? Have you done them with animals?
I'm not an animal person. I've got a bit of a dog phobia, so you won't find me exploring that one. But as one of the things I've done in the past is I might be waiting. I was waiting for a long bus trip once in this huge car park, and I was walking the outline of the classical labyrinth just myself. It wasn't drawn there, but I could see that you could do that with horses or dogs or what have you. The problem, of course, with a horse is the size of the horse round a labyrinth. But in that, if you've got an open area and you can embody the outline of that classical labyrinth, I could see that, yes, you could do it.
Lovely. Great. A whole new field of labyrinth work evolving just as we speak. Lovely. Thank you. And Nicole says thanks as well. So we're going to launch into the last part, and I know some of you are keen to do the quiz so you can get your PD certificate as well, and we'll do that in just a few minutes now. So just to share my screen here again with you, we've done a good opportunity to check in. We've had a few questions, which has been really nice. Our next one of these free webinars will be next month on the 21st of June in the evening, 7:30 at night for those on the east coast of Australia. And that's, I've got 3 wonderful early career therapists who are going to be talking about on a panel why they love creative therapy. So if you think that might relate to you, or you might be interested in hearing those perspectives and some of the exercises they particularly like using, then do register for that for free as well. We've got a few other ones also now open for registration that you can check out on the website through the link that I'll send you later on today. We've got a few other paid ones coming up. We've got quite a lot of things happening between now and July, and our August to December calendar will be out in the next couple of weeks. Sue Jennings is a fabulous drama therapist, and next Wednesday night she's doing another webinar for us on therapeutic play for attachment issues in children aged 4 to 10. So we're working with those children that age. Robert Grant is coming to us from the US on Saturday the 29th of May for anyone working again with young children who want to use movement and somatic exercises more in conjunction with other sort of creative or play therapy work that they're doing, or if you're just not doing play therapy but still doing counselling work with children or running groups, that will have lots of great tips, that 3-hour Saturday workshop. We've got Natalie McKenzie, who's our fabulous drama therapist in Sydney, and she's doing a Welcome to Drama Therapy course on Friday the 11th of June from 10 to 1. That will also be very practical. And I'm running an art therapy group starting on the 10th of June. It'll be Thursday nights for 5 weeks. Something I've been running, started in the pandemic last year, and it's been going really well. So there's only 6 places in that. If you're interested, you could register online for that as well. Could I get you to all join me in silently but symbolically giving Liz a lovely thank you for being here and generously sharing her knowledge today. Thank you, Liz. Thank you all for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again at another round of our courses. See you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you to you all.
Bye now.